Okay, we're going to get started. Good morning, everybody. Well, I know it's not morning for everyone, so I should just say hello because I know we have people joining from all over the United States and out of the country. So welcome, everybody, our communities near and far. My name is Tina Berger, and I'm the Patient Services Director with the Scleroderma Foundation of California. And we're so happy that you're joining us today for our virtual talk focusing on the experiences and needs of a caregiver in your life and you, the person living with scleroderma, brought to you by our guest speaker, Dr. Ginny Maril. So often when a loved one gets sick with a chronic illness, a spouse, family member, or members help to care for them, and the responsibilities can be difficult for both the person providing the care as well as you, the person living with scleroderma. And Dr. Maril is going to be identifying some of the ways caregiving for a loved one impacts a relationship or a family, and how to successfully manage the role with patience and understanding while acknowledging each other's efforts. Before I go over the important reminders, I want to introduce Andrew Emmett. He's our executive director. And now I got to find you, Andrew. There you are. Hold on a second. Spotlight. There we go, Andrew.
Hello, everybody. I just want to say welcome. It's a somewhat rainy Saturday here in LA, but wherever you are, I hope you're having a good morning, and thank you for being a part of this very important talk that we're going to have today. I just also wanted to let you know that we've got some events coming up. We are going back to our community events, and we have our Las Vegas event, April 27th, A Million Steps for Scleroderma. We are doing one in LA at La Mirada on June 29th. And we're working on the San Diego date and possibly a Northern California date for later in the year, the fall for the Northern California. The website for the LAOC event will be going live on Monday. So we hope to see some of you there. And on that note, I just wanted to welcome everybody and thank you for being a part of the presentation today.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Tina.
Appreciate it. I also wanted to let you know that while we're recording this meeting, we're going to be putting this wonderful talk on our video library. And for anybody, we have all of our past videos in our library where you can go to our website under support group resources and then click on education, and then you'll see the videos. And I categorize them in the different, why can't I think of it? The different sorts, whether it's education, test, emotional support, disability. So if anybody's interested, we have a wonderful, wonderful library of educational and helpful videos. Please keep in mind for this talk, Dr. Maril wants to interact with the audience briefly during the beginning stages of the talk and once we open the floor for question and answer. And as always, please be mindful for anything that can be deemed distracting to our speaker or others joining the meeting while you're on camera. If you need to step away or have a conversation with someone in your household, please turn your camera off until you're finished, and then you can turn it back on. We want to show the utmost respect for our speaker who took time out of her busy day to provide this presentation and all of our families that are watching. It's very important to remain muted during the entire meeting. This way we will cut down on any unnecessary interruptions and allow our speaker to stay on schedule. And please remain muted until we give permission to unmute or we unmute you. You can raise your virtual hand if and when Dr. Maril asks a direct question to our audience, and some of this will be at the beginning of the talk. And when Dr. Maril finishes her talk in its entirety, we're going to open the floor to question and answer. And you can raise your virtual hand, which you'll have that at the, well, for most of you, it's the bottom. I think it's a little different for Mac. And that way we'll see your hand up in your box, and we're going to go in the order of our boxes, which is different maybe on your screen, but we're going to go in each row and we'll start to address everybody's questions. If you don't raise your virtual hand, you're more than welcome to also put your question in the chat box, and I'll try to go between your hand being raised and the chat box to go over the questions with Dr. Maril. If you do not want your full name displayed, you can choose to only display your first name. If you don't want to be on camera, you don't have to be. You can, if you need my help, put a note in the chat box and I'll help you disable your camera. And let's see, we will be recording this meeting, but only myself and Dr. Merrill will be on the recording. We do this by highlighting the speaker and myself when doing the introductions of the presentation. For our disclosures, the Scleroderma Foundation of California is not affiliated with the National Scleroderma Foundation. The Scleroderma Foundation of California does not endorse any specific treatments, drugs, or research trials. Because scleroderma affects all patients differently, treatment approaches that may be appropriate for some patients may be less suitable for other patients. Any treatment decisions should be based on knowledgeable discussions between patients and their clinicians. Dr. Ginny Maril is the Associate Director for Clinical Services at the University of Texas at Austin. Dr. Maril is a licensed psychologist serving the state of California and Texas and completed her Bachelor of Arts and Master of Psychology at the University of Dallas. She earned her doctorate at Texas Women's University and became licensed in California in 2012. Her program and internship were accredited by the American Psychological Association, and additionally, she is confirmed by the National Register as a health service psychologist. Dr. Maril specializes in working with people living with chronic illness and rare disease and their caregivers because meeting the challenge of life while managing difficulties that come with a chronic illness is no easy feat, and together she helps you find ways to approach and live with your diagnosis. Dr. Maril also specializes in working with college students and young adults, as well as survivors of sexual trauma, and trained in a variety of treatment approaches, including CBT and adapted DBT. Dr. Maril provides teletherapy in Arizona, California, Colorado, Delaware, Georgia, Illinois, Missouri, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Texas, and Utah. Dr. Maril also has a personal connection with scleroderma, her mother, who lives with scleroderma, and she's provided many important talks related to mental health and scleroderma, coping with scleroderma, and caregivers and scleroderma, both locally and national, for many years. The scleroderma communities are indebted to her and the impact she's had on our families near and far. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to our guest speaker, Dr. Ginny Maril, and I'm going to highlight her now. So thank you.
Oh my goodness, Tina, thank you. That was
Thank
very,
you.
very kind. I feel indebted to y'all for
You're so
just
sweet.
the opportunities to work with y'all over the years. It's really cool to flip through the screens here and see some familiar faces. I hope everybody is doing really well. I'm going to do my best today to be adept at technology and make this a seamless show, and also try to be as helpful as possible. So first step in the technology challenge of the day is to share my screen.
There you go.
Okay. Presenter mode. Okay, is that in the whole, is that full screen?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, perfect. Okay, I will warn you that with the screen like this, I can't see you, unfortunately. So, Tina, I'll rely on you and Andrew to let me know if there are questions or anything that comes up. Please feel free to stop down if there's something that feels really timely and pressing. You can stop me while I'm chatting. If it makes more sense to hold it to the end, feel free to do that as well.
Great.
So, usually start with saying who I am. Tina did a better job of that than I can. I will say that I relocated to Austin about 4 years ago from the San Fernando Valley, and I miss it. I miss California, so I'm really excited for the opportunity to stay in touch with y'all and see everybody. I am working at the University of Texas at Austin, though I don't represent them. With this presentation, I am their clinical director. It's a large center serving the University of Texas, which has an enrollment around 50,000. So it's a big jump up from where I was in Ventura County at California Lutheran University prior to this move. I am the daughter of a scleroderma patient and a scleroderma caregiver. So that's my mom and dad. also one of the reasons that I am in Austin. I was able to move about 15 minutes away from them. And they're in their early 80s. Mom was diagnosed in the mid 90s and has been living with whatever has come about, related to scleroderma over the course of the last many years. So obviously, she's been around a long time post-diagnosis, which we're all very grateful for. And I'm sure similarly to many of y'all, when she was diagnosed, it was very clear that the doctor said, you have 4 years. So that really shifted life, of course, for my mom, of course, for my father, who ended up retiring early. They moved back to Austin from where they were prior to. Anyway, we can't predict life, and that will be a recurring theme of this today. And I know I don't have to tell you about that. I have worked with the Scleroderma Foundation in various capacities, the Canada, the national, California, various states, for about the last 15 years. I've also worked with Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation, the Pulmonary Hypertension Association, but obviously very close, most closely with the Scleroderma Foundations, which hold a special place. I've been able to meet so many incredible people over the years, and I feel grateful for that. So that's a little bit of who I am, who I am not. This is a wizard. If you haven't seen the Fabulous Beasts series, I'm not a wizard. That's lesson number 1 of this. What I'm going to share today is what I know and what I've learned over the past 15 years, whether that's through the research that I've done, or interacting with folks, or providing therapy and counseling to folks either living with chronic illness, scleroderma specifically, or their caregivers. I have to tell you that I promise I've had the answers of how to immediately make scleroderma easier on this. I would tell you, and then we would all go on about our days. There's no magic answer, as you all know. Y'all would have figured this out by now if that were the case. So what I'm going to share today are things that do work, but they take focus, energy, and patience to implement. And some days that's just easier than others. We're just not our best selves every day, and that's okay. Some of the things I'm going to tell you today may make you be like, yeah, duh, Dr. Maril. Or maybe that feels uncomfortable, or yeah, I'm just not going to do that. And that's fine. But please know that there's nothing that I share with you that isn't backed by research to say that it is effective in coping with stress associated with chronic illness and stress in general. And I can assure you, if you don't try it, it won't work. So, if you can listen from a place of an open heart and open mind, and think about maybe some of the things that would fit for you, things you can challenge yourself to do. Again, when you have enough spoons to try some of these things, and that's not going to be every day. I am going to talk about caregiver relationships today, and I'm going to talk very generally about relationships because I know there's a lot of different folks taking care of patients. And so that's going to encompass people who are married, partnered, it might be families, siblings. And if I do speak generally and talk about partnerships, know that that's going to include everybody. I'm just talking about relationships with people. And I'm going to try to leave about 10 or 15 minutes at the end of this conversation for questions. So first thing I want us to start thinking about is where we learned about relationships and what we learned about them. So really, we learn more than we think from media about what relationships are supposed to or should look like. We get these implicit and explicit messages that we start getting very early on, like even in cartoons, some like typical stereotypes kind of start to show up, kind of the running jokes of whatever those relationships are start entering our consciousness pretty early. And typically the most salient relationship we witness is that of our caregivers. Typically that's our parents, but that could really be a lot of different people who are involved in the primary caregiving. And what that does is it starts to create the expectations that we have about relationships. And it's not always like The Notebook. It can be lots of different types of movies and all sorts of genres, and that can vary day to day. And sometimes scleroderma is there when a relationship begins, And sometimes a relationship precedes scleroderma, and sometimes scleroderma happens when a relationship is well underway. And when that happens, expectations can get really thrown off and lots of things can change. Again, I don't have to tell y'all that that happens. But when you think about what our expectations are, and then when they're not met, that can feel, it just feels really terrible because we had this idea of like, no, this is, I didn't sign up for this. This is what I thought was going to happen. I might feel entitled to like, no, this is not how my life is supposed to be. It's supposed to look like that. I was supposed to do X, Y, and Z. And all of that is valid. And whenever there's a gap between our expectations and our actual experience, we can feel a lot of different feelings. It can look like resentment, anger, disappointment, all sorts of things. And those certainly would then overlap with what we know to be the emotional experiences of scleroderma. So I'm going to compare patients and caregivers and just attend to how much overlap that there really is. Might be about different things. You're not going to share all of the things, but there is so much in common. And I share this with the hope to increase empathy and the understanding of each other's experience. Very common to feel things like sadness, guilt, loss, and loss can be anything. That can be a very literal loss, as in someone we love passing away. It can be the loss of the life you thought you were supposed to live. It can be the loss of just your ability to take for granted that you can go out and take a walk today with your partner, or with your family member. Hostility comes up because for the patient, guess what? We're in pain. We're not nice. We're not at our best when we're hurting a lot. Very common. And then if somebody is feeling hostile towards somebody else, and that typically just happens to whoever is closest, that tends to be family, that hostility gets directed at the person. And guess what? A lot of times we can be hostile back. It's a very, very normal reaction. Disappointment, fear, and uncertainty, feeling vulnerable, impacts to self-esteem. This is an interesting one because it can differ between patients and caregivers. So scleroderma patients specifically tend to they really struggle with self-esteem, and that it decreases because you don't have the ability necessarily to do the things that helped you gain esteem. For caregivers, there is also research to show that if you're doing well at caregiving, that can actually increase self-esteem. And there's some pride that's there that can come from it. Certainly body image, for all the reasons, comes up with a patient, including invisible and visible disabilities. For caregivers, it's very normal for people to experience resentment, not to say that patients also won't experience resentment. And then doubt comes up as well. And this is one of these, nasty parts of scleroderma and other illnesses that could be invisible. And because it changes so day to day, folks can wonder, like, you're really sick, like what's going on? And I've heard some people like, she just doesn't want to do the dishes, right? When the actual experience of the patient is like, I can't stand today. I can't tolerate like water on my hands. It hurts too much, like whatever those reasons are. But guess what? Like 2 days ago, you could do the dishes. It wasn't a big deal. And so some of that doubt can get fostered. So what the research tells us about relationships and scleroderma these are each pretty common things to have happen: hostility, sensitivity, irritability. If you're in a sexual relationship, then a change in intimacy levels, certainly doubt, as I mentioned, and financial stress. And none of those things tend to be like great for relationships. Peer relationships or partnerships change to an imbalance of power. So where you had two equals prior to illness, or for illness getting worse, then that power imbalance changes because one person becomes more reliant on the other. And when two people are well and able-bodied in a relationship, you can be right here. And maybe we kind of go like this sometimes, but if there's a chronic illness, then that imbalance is more permanent and that gap may widen. And you can start to feel like you are, taking like care of someone can bring up feelings of like almost like a parent-child relationship, and sometimes it is parent-child, right? But it's like, I am taking care of this person. Guess what? And the person being taken care of, they don't want to put you in that position either. So much can come up. It's never one person's experience when you're in a relationship. So that's just a brief overview of some of the things that, like I said, the research says that we would want to keep an eye on or can happen in relationships and just with being a caregiver, being a patient. I try to keep that stuff brief at the beginning of the presentations. You already know what's hard about scleroderma. You're living it. And so I want to spend the bulk of the time on things that can help. So I'm going to transition to that now. So I like this quote by Fitzgerald: vitality shows in not only the ability to persist, but the ability to start over. And I want you to think about ways that you do stay vital. And that's going to change over the course of our life. And it's going to change over the development of our ability status, like what we are able and not able to do. And so sometimes, yeah, it does feel like persistence. And then sometimes it feels like, oof, I got to start over. And how do I stay connected with the things that help me feel vital? And I mean that in a way that is kind of about like more of a supportive, positive energy in your life versus negativity. That's a big shift to make, especially when there's quite a lot to feel negatively about. And we deal with cognitive, distortions like confirmation bias, a negativity bias. So confirmation bias would be once you note something, then you start seeing more proof of it. So if we combine a negativity bias, where I'm more likely to see the things that are negative, with a confirmation bias, I'm going to find all the stuff to be negative and cranky about. Very easy. It's harder to shift because we're not born with a positivity bias. We actually are wired for a negativity bias. And so to try to shift to the positive is very difficult because our brain is fighting us, our body's fighting us, and things are working against that. So this is not an easy thing. And again, it is one of the things that's proven to help. So when I was very early on in my training and I was starting to learn to work with couples and families, my supervisor at the time was in his 60th year of marriage. And so this is the relationship math that he shared with me. So simple. It's like, if something is good for the relationship, do more of it. If something is bad for the relationship, do less of it. I'm like, yeah, man, but like how? But how do we do that? It is so simple. But when things start feeling really complicated, start thinking about what are the things that are good for our relationship. And if I know that like I'm trying to think of something annoying that a partner might do. Maybe I'm just watching TikToks on my phone and I don't have my AirPod in and my partner's trying to watch TV. That's annoying. Okay. So hopefully I'm going to become aware of that. And I'm going to be like, you know what? They've told me that bothers them. I'm going to do less of it. A very simple example, but I want y'all to think about broadening that to how that might look in action in your own lives. It can be little tiny things like watching videos without headphones to much bigger things of I need your help making a decision. And when you are wishy-washy, that's really frustrating for me. So let's think about things that are helpful so I can get y'all's minds thinking about what makes sense. Cats are a mixed bag. Sometimes they are helpful and sometimes they are not. Things that are unhelpful, winning. That's not helpful in a relationship. Sometimes it feels like a competition. It's not. I'd say being right, and it kind of goes along with winning, less helpful. Guilt is not helpful, and it's really difficult to work through. Resentment, silence, not talking, shutting down, those things aren't helpful. And yet it really is a go-to for many people of like, things are overwhelming, I got to check out. And there are all the reasons that might be happening. Judgment, also not helpful. And again, these are all human things. Every single one of us does it. What I want to emphasize today is the importance of slowing down and attending to when these things are happening, when you're doing, when you're noticing them in your partner. And then thinking about helpful things. Talking openly and respectfully. Communicating honestly. Honestly also means kindly. I think there is something in the lexicon of like, I'm just being honest, right? Okay, well, you can be honest and mean, or you can be honest and kind. And so trying to make that balance of clarity and honesty can be a real art. Humor, it's one of the best coping strategies to buffer us against difficult things. Yes, it is hard to find a sense of humor when we're depressed. And again, not all these things are going to work every day. That's why we're talking about a lot of them, so that you can figure out what is going to fit for where you're at. Trying to be creative, and that can be like in more of a literal sense, like doing things, creating things that help you feel better. And also just like creative problem solving, because y'all are going to get hit or have been hit with a lot of different things and you don't know how to do it. And then you figure something out, and that's a win. And then to be able to celebrate that together. Accepting your partner or your patient's experience, patients accepting your caregiver's experience, and really trying to hear that and doing it as much as possible while bracketing judgment. So keeping that off the table also. If there are others that you can think of, please drop them in the chat and we can look at those. I mentioned that cats can be helpful or helpful. I just had a cat break into my office, even though the door was closed. I'm glad this is going to be on the recording. 1 second. When Tina was mentioning minimizing distractions earlier, I wanted to make it clear that pets are never distractions. So if any of those make their ways into your Zoom windows, that's always a happy thing. Something else that my family supervisor told me was helpful in thinking about working with couples and families is essentially, would you like to be right or would you like to be married? Like, how important is this win for you? Sometimes it is really important, and other times it's just not. And you got to think about the finite amount of energy that you have and ask yourself, like, how much do I want to invest? Like, is this a thing worth investing in? The answer is yes. I'll die on this hill, as they say. Go for it. If you catch yourself and think like, that does not matter, great, move it along. So this is something when people ask about or when people present for any kind of family therapy, couples therapy, this is one of the primary complaints. We don't communicate. They don't understand me. This is really common. Communication, sex, and money are why people come to therapy. And in relationships. So, like I said, I want us to talk about slowing down. Because it's very easy to get into our automatic mind and we just go, 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 go. Because guess what? If you are, especially if you're a caregiver and, you have to get up, get the kids taken care of, get to work, do your work, do the commute, get home, get the kids ready for bed, figure out, food, all. Like you're always doing that. You're always thinking. And so you have to go fast and your brain can get really used to doing that. Which is less helpful when we're trying to have an important talk with our partner. So the first thing that you want to do is think about your intention. Like before you begin, think about how you'd like to be there for your loved one in that conversation. It can be really helpful to just imagine like who you want to be, how you'll show empathy, and how you will try to communicate presence and to connect. Relationships aren't about being right, proving somebody else wrong. They're about listening, understanding, and connecting. So if you are driving home from work, it was a dumb day and you're ruminating about all the stupid things that people did during the day, and I can't believe so-and-so sent that email. And then you start thinking ahead to when you get home, I have to do this, and then I have to do this, and then I have to do this. What that's doing to your nervous system is activating it and it's keeping you up here. What you can do to bring it down is as simple as taking some deep breaths. You can do that in traffic. I know you've got the time out there. Being intentional about that is very, very, very helpful. Be present in the car. You can't cook dinner in the car. You can't put the kids to bed in the car, can't get anybody dressed, can't have bath time. You're in the car. That's your time. It's time with yourself, listen to music or a podcast, and try not to ruminate. If you know you need to have a tough conversation with someone, it can be helpful just to agree on ground rules. It's better to do this in advance of difficult conversations. This might sound obvious, but avoid name calling, insults, pushing personal hot buttons. Bringing up the past is not helpful. And that doesn't mean, hey, when you left the sunroof open on the car last week, it made me feel like you didn't care about my car, something like that. It's like, I remember this time 5 years ago when this thing happened and you always do this. Okay. There's a big difference between like providing feedback and then digging back into the past to hurt someone. Agree when you're kind of thinking about these ground rules to take a break and step away if you find yourself getting heated or angry. And talk about how to talk about things. And this might sound like a really weird thing to do, but it's really helpful if y'all agree on something, on a way to communicate. And then if you need to step away, we step away. Try to speak from an I perspective. There's a big difference between like you're totally inconsiderate. You never slow down to my pace when we're walking together. Try something like, I'm always trying to catch up with you and it takes a lot of energy. Can you walk more slowly when we're together? It helps me know that you understand how much this illness affects me. Something like that. So it's like, I'm telling you my experience. Ideally, that's not invalidated. So what I mean by that is if you share your experience and someone says, no, you're not, that's invalidating. If you're sharing your experience, that's your experience. That's not like right or wrong necessarily. You're just sharing how you experienced it. You also have to be open to hearing how the other person, what their experience is too. So that helps your loved one acknowledge that you're taking responsibility for your emotions. Listening actively, that means that you're going to listen to what the person talking to you is saying. Sounds super simple, right? And yet Therapists go through a lot of training to learn how to listen actively. There's also this really important piece where if you're listening actively, you're not prepping what you're going to say back. Because then you're in your head and you're thinking about, no, that's not true. I'm going to say this, this, and this, and then I'll get them. Nope. Don't formulate your answer. Hear what's being said, then formulate your answer. And if you just need more time to process, you can say, I just need a little bit more time to process that, or let me think for a second. I want to try to put together what I'm saying in a way that is consistent with who I want to be and who I want to be as I share this. I can be helpful after you've listened, if you kind of repeat back what they say and just be like, okay, here's what I'm hearing. Does that check out with you? Am I getting that right? And again, this is two-way street. When you get to a place where you can look for realistic paths forward, realistic is difficult. A lot of us are eager to problem solve when we're faced with challenges. Don't agree to a solution that isn't going to work for you. It can be really tempting to try harder not to argue, but it might be more realistic to talk about the circumstances that typically lead to arguments. And then you can kind of head those things off before they happen. Of course, not all these situations have easy solutions. Sometimes the best you can do in the moment is just talk about your experience and agree to talk it again and keep a conversation going. We hear that saying practice makes perfect. Does not. Perfect does not exist. That's a very difficult lesson for many of us to learn. Practice makes better. So sometimes conversations will go really well and sometimes they just won't. Even conversations that don't leave you feeling warm and fuzzy or more connected are worth the effort. Actually going through tough stuff together, though you're on the same team, which you are, brings people together versus pushing them apart. But it is a very active process. And again, we don't always have energy for it. That's okay. But when we can, it's something it's really helpful to focus on. Okay, so this is going to be my next thing. We're going to see if this is going to work. I'm going to share this video about communication real quick.
It's just, there's all this
Are you able to hear that, Tina?
Yes, thank you.
pressure, you
Great.
know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. All of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. Ow. If you would just...
Don't.
Try to see things my way.
Okay, so I feel like that's a really helpful example of active listening and how how we can get pulled in conversations to share different things. Is this back to the it's not about the nail slide on the PowerPoint in your view? Tina?
Yes, it is.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so it's a little bit like stereotypical, but also very funny. There are a lot of gender roles associated with like being the person who's supposed to fix things. So if you have been socialized to identify a problem and then go fix it, it's going to be really hard not to do that because it can be frustrating. Like, just take the nail out of your head. Done. Some folks just need to be heard and validated and understood.
Dr. Merrill,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
apologize. I just realized that you clicked on it and we heard it, but we did not see a video. We only heard the word. I think
Oh,
I can speak for everybody, that we only
shoot.
heard, we actually didn't see, the
Let
video.
me see
I
if I
think that
can.
it's a, it comes up as a, you have to maybe click on that one after you open it. There.
Mm, Are you seeing that?
Yes,
Okay, I'm so sorry, y'all. Here we go.
thank you.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me. And I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head. And it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing.
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
No, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Come on. If you would just.
Don't.
Try to see things.
Okay. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense now.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me know. So, really being engaged in active listening, a few things, other things that those folks were doing that are helpful are to sitting near each other is helpful in difficult conversations. Humor is helpful in difficult conversations. Actually touching each other is helpful in conversations because it's harder to be mad. And again, research backs that up. Even if it feels like I am furious at you and the last thing I want to do is touch you, right? But actually overcoming that helps it decrease. So if you are in a intimate relationship with somebody, sex absolutely is a thing that comes up because it changes. And for a lot of folks, sexuality might be the first priority during different phases of chronic illness, especially scleroderma. A lot of things change, whether that's physical, whether that's desire, whether that's medication, right? Being able to accept changes, deal with bodily changes, your own self-esteem. Certainly, people with scleroderma are more likely to experience and be diagnosed with depression. That is not uncommon. And then sometimes people might get prescribed SSRIs, which are antidepressants, and those are notoriously impact the libido negatively. So that changes as part of a relationship, as does the uncertainty and that dynamic shift I mentioned earlier, where the caregiver and the patient kind of go into more of a hierarchical versus a partnership relationship. That gets difficult as well. And the thing, again, no easy solution, but it does take increased and skilled communication and the need for creativity and flexibility when it comes to what that's going to look like for the relationship as y'all move forward. So I've said a lot of stuff. And I want y'all to just take a minute to check in with yourself. This is an exercise that you can literally do anywhere. You can take a deep breath and check in with yourself. And this is a thing that you can do when you're feeling activated. Deep breath is going to bring you back into your body. If you're feeling like you're having trouble getting into your body, do what you can to feel your feet on the ground. And just ask yourself, what do I need in this moment from myself or someone else? And those answers can range from like, I'm hungry. I probably need to eat something. I'm tired. I'm gonna make sure that I get in bed at a reasonable hour tonight. I need like 2 weeks at the spa. That can be anything. And then maybe it is, you know what, I need to check in with my partner and see if if there's something that I need to ask of them. Like, how do you feel about me going to see a movie tonight by myself? You know, think about what you need. Caregivers get to need things too. So something that's helpful in relationships is trying to figure out how to be yourselves together. And that can be a difficult one, especially when you're providing care for someone. You have to each maintain your own lives to the extent that you are able. And that's going to change over the course of an illness, can change over the course of a day. The things that you're used to doing together can change, and that's going to bring up feelings. Especially when one person wants to keep doing that thing that used to be the thing that you did together. You know, whether usually that's something active, like we used to hike, we used to go biking as a family. It feels like a real loss. And also it's still a part of who I am, and can I do that? Person's going to feel guilty for wanting to continue to do that and do those things. And that's going to be difficult to feel. The other person might feel resentful that they get to go do that. Totally valid feelings on each side. And trying to figure out how to work together to do a difficult thing and bring y'all closer together. None of it's easy, but it's really critical to figure out how to do what you need to do, each of you, so that you are still yourself. You're together though. Mentioned a second ago that caregivers need to take care of themselves also. That's a difficult thing to remember. It's really difficult for caregivers to do many times. It's so hard to see somebody that we love struggling and hurting. Everybody can probably relate to seeing somebody they love hurting. It feels terrible, and we do just want to be able to fix it. And there's only so much that's in our control when it comes to a disease like scleroderma. The research tells us that caregivers are notoriously bad at taking care of themselves, but it's mission critical that you do. You can't pour from an empty cup. If you're not filling your own cup, you're not going to be able to be there for the folks who need you. So that's a thing that I'll brag on my parents for a second for. Something that they did really nicely is to figure out, they each have their own stuff. Like mom has ladies bridge and dad goes to guys bridge, and then they have couples bridge. So it's like they have stuff they do together, and then they have the stuff they do separately. Dad has like a men's breakfast group that he goes to every week, and it's just understood that's what he goes and he does. He's gone for a couple hours, then he's back to do whatever, you know, he needs to do for the rest of the day. And it can even be done in these small increments that that just fit into life. And sometimes you have a couple hours to go to breakfast with some friends, and sometimes you have like 5 minutes for a meditation or to take a couple breaths or listen to a podcast you like or whatever that is. So we have to have these like little things we can do, and then we need to think about the bigger things that we can do to continue filling your cup. I talked earlier about being able to slow things down. That's really connected to mindfulness and being mindful. staying aware of what's going on in the present and not judging it. The judging part is the part that tends to be really difficult for people. And another critical piece of that is to practice self-compassion. It's a good chance that if you expect a lot out of yourself, you aren't necessarily talking kindly to yourself when you don't meet your own expectations. Doing that is associated with negative self-talks or being self-critical. A lot of us have a self-critical voice that pops up at really convenient times. That's associated with anxiety. It's associated with depression and just increased stress, which we know just isn't good for a body or a mind at all. If that's resonating with you at all, think about ways that you can be nicer to yourself, even if it's monitoring how you're speaking with yourself in your head. If you catch yourself being mean to yourself, try to figure out how you would talk to somebody that you really care about and talk to yourself that way. It literally contributes to new neural pathways and helps our automatic thinking turn towards the more positive versus that negativity bias I was talking about at the beginning of this. The most critical thing for you to remember when you're struggling is to remember that you are on the same team. Y'all have the same goal. You're not fighting with each other. It should be y'all against scleroderma, y'all against everything else. But a lot of times, our feelings get taken out on the person or the people that are closest to us. To remind yourself, we're on the same team. We want the same thing. You might have different ideas about how to get there, but you have the same goal. I will always make a plug for therapy if it feels like you just need some more help than what you're getting. Therapy is a really lovely way to have some support and to be able to talk to somebody about what is going on with you. I speak with many caregivers who are having a lot of feelings and they just want to sort that out so they can figure out how to talk to their partner or the person who they're providing care for. And to be able to just kind of speak freely, get your thoughts in order and be able to do that, develop different skills, just have some time for you. This can be a piece of self-care too. If it feels like that would be something that would be helpful for you, I do encourage you to look into finding a therapist to talk to. So that is my last thought. I'm going to end the slideshow, get my face up on the screen, look at y'all's beautiful faces, and see if we've had any questions come up.
If anybody has any questions, comments, thoughts that you'd like to share with Dr. Maril and the rest of your sclero families, please feel free to. We want to have this to be interactive and get your thoughts and, be able to have some, common ways that everybody can identify with each other. So I do know that when you were going through your presentation, Dr. Maril, there was one comment when you asked and from Pat saying what's helpful is just listening, which it's interesting. I always appreciate that because I'm always a fixer, kind of like your little video. And sometimes I'm so busy trying to fix, I'm not listening. So I do appreciate that it is important sometimes just to listen. We don't always have to have the answer. And Pat, I appreciate you saying that. Anybody else? I'm going to try to go through Tamisa, let me unmute you. Where did you go, girl? As soon as I went to, there she is. Yeah, go ahead, Tamisa.
Hi, Dr. Maril. I was just wondering, how does one encourage their caregiver, especially if they're like a spouse or a partner in an intimate relationship? How do they encourage that person to become more of a team player. My husband is not here right now. He's in another room. I think sometimes maybe he gets overwhelmed. I don't know. Maybe he thinks he knows all there is to know about scleroderma. I mean, we all can learn more. But I I don't think we're like on the same team. That's the feeling I get sometimes. I think maybe he's putting all of this at a distance, and that's the way some people deal with things like this. Hi. Anyway, so how can we encourage and not be judgmental? I want us to be on the same team. Thank you.
No, thank you for asking that question. I think the initial disclaimer is it's really difficult to, I'll say this, we can't make somebody behave in a certain way, right? Sometimes it'd be really cool if we could just like do this thing and that would make it happen. I think you're very astute to think of that maybe some of that distancing is intentional because it's hard, you know, and so that can feel really hard to engage with. I think there's a couple different ways, but I think starting a conversation of even like, oh, this, you can even use this as an example. You know, we just sat in this thing and we're talking about, you know, how things impact caregivers. And I'm wondering if any of that, if you feel any of that, you know, and timing that in a way so it feels like it's a good time. Like if you're going to interrupt somebody in March Madness, probably not going to get like the most attentive person, right, in response. And I think the most that we can do is share our experience of like, hey, this thing really stood out to me. Do you ever feel that way? And asking about what their experience is, or if there are specific asks that you would have, think about what those might be and how to bring those forward. Ultimately, it's always going to be the other person's decision on how they're going to handle it. What we can do is share our experience, what our hopes are, and see where those go. I wish I had a better answer of just do this and then they'll do this.
Thank you, Dr. Merrill. Thank you, Tamisa.
Yeah, thanks to me.
Anybody else have any questions? I also thought what would be nice is that, was there something that stood out when Dr. Merrill was giving her talk that resonated with you, that you would like to say, you know, share a comment or a thought on, or anything that has helped you personally that others that are in today's meeting could benefit from? I think it's always nice to hear from each other.
Mhm.
Does anybody have any thoughts that they would like to share on anything specific from today's meeting? It's, you know, when we have them, I like to see, you know, the nods, and some of the people that were on, I saw that, you know, moments where you can see the emotion on the face or the nods of understanding. And again, why this is so important, because, you know, just like in a support group meeting, you know, you can finish each other's sentences because a lot of people go through some of the same things. And many people that are here today have shared some of those personal thoughts with me, which I'm so glad that you're here today. But I would appreciate, you know, what was your thoughts on something that resonated with you that you want to share with the group, or your own thought on something? I would really appreciate that being part of today's talk before we end our meeting. So is there anybody that would like to share? Kelly Ryan, hold on, let me unmute you. Or ask, you can unmute, my friend.
Oh, I unmute.
There you go.
Hi, doctor. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Kelly.
I tend to keep my marriage separate from my disease. And what that looks like is I'm married to someone that seems to know it all. He does a lot of research. He's very open to learning, but then he also is very pushy in his way of communicating with me. So if I already know the info, he will say, I know you know it, but this is my insight to maybe a better direction for you. So I've learned over the years living with scleroderma, and prior to that, 20 years of having systemic lupus, I've learned to take care of myself, and I don't let anyone take care of me. I tend to isolate when I need to isolation. I tend to say, I just need to be alone. And I do that with my whole life, meaning the people in my life. And I run a support group, and a lot of changes occurred because I asked, I've been running it 17 years, so it's a long time. Anytime I ask the group to participate in maybe covering the meeting, no one wants to do it. But now I did find a new diagnosed patient who speaks more than just English. She speaks Spanish, and being in the San Fernando Valley is a lot of Spanish community. So I'm very excited because I think some of the I'm mentioning that because some of the psychology was like when I did ask for help, I didn't receive it from my own community. So why would I even think the help is there in my everyday life? So that's why I built up this wall. It kind of keeps me needing to not need anyone. Does that make sense, Doctor?
It does make sense. Yeah. And certainly an approach one can take, and it is difficult to you keep putting yourself out there and not receiving what you need. Then I think it's very natural to be like, well, then I will figure out how to do this, and that works for some folks, and then it doesn't work for other folks. I think it's always two sides of the same coin, right? So there is that piece where you have your independence, you're able to do these things, you don't have to deal with the disappointment. And then the other flip side of that could be that it's maybe harder to find support, or maybe people aren't getting through that filter as much. And so I'm not saying this is your experience, but some people I've spoken with do describe feeling like isolated when they do that. It's a good fit for some folks, and then other folks want to be, I guess more connected isn't the right word, but just want to continue to try to get the support. So I don't think there's one right way for everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Maril, and thank you, Kelly. I have a question in the chat box.
Oh,
It's from Jackie. How can we help our dependent child open up and speak about their experiences?
Yeah. Ooh, that is a tough one. It's the answer is going to be similar to me, so right. We can't make somebody, but we can try to prepare as best we can to make it as easy as somebody for somebody. I think, again, trying to have a well-timed check-in. So not when they're, super stressed, or not when they're feeling like, but just, I don't know, a little more closed off. But to ask really, like, how are you doing with this? Like, this is a big deal. Whatever the thing is that's going through, that we're going through, how are you doing with it? First answer is going to be like, oh, I'm fine. A lot of times, because they don't want to burden you. They already know like how much you're hurting, how much you're managing. And so might be like, no, I'm fine. I've got this, especially for kids who might be high achieving, or might feel like they just need to be okay in order for you to not have one more worry. And I think you can acknowledge that if that's something you think is going on. I really want you to be able to talk to me about this. I'm going to be okay. Your experience of this is important too. It's not a burden to me. And so sometimes when you can call out what you think might be going on in a way that is connecting and caring, that can help them open up. Some folks I've talked to will like ask one question and then the kids will be like, oh, it's fine. And they say, okay, well, let me talk about this other thing. Then we just like move on. Do like a little setup and then another check-in and to say, I'm fine. Keep checking in. And make it sort of a regular thing that you do. So it's not just a one-time thing, because this disease changes like very quickly. It can. And so people's experiences of it can change quickly. So doing check-ins can be really helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Merrill. And I was just thinking when you were saying that for Jacqueline, would you consider that, and I don't know if this would work or not, especially with kids and teenagers, having like a specific time that's set aside, and you as the parent and them as the child or teenager knows that this is going to be a time for the undivided attention, and maybe they would I don't know, open up knowing that that's that moment, and then it's squashed and they move on with their day, especially when kids don't really want to open up. Just a thought,
Yeah.
Jacqueline and Dr. Merrill, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that if you have a sense that that would be something that would work in your relationship, then yeah, it might be like, hey, let's go sit outside. Let's go. Can you drive me to this park? Do you want to, like, I don't know, doing something that's like somewhere else. It's just the two of you, can be directive, and you can even definitely plan for it. Like, I want to make sure that I'm really understanding what your experience is like, because this is impacting you too. So maybe, in a couple of days on Wednesday, we can go to whatever park and we can just have a chat. And I think you're going to get potentially more thoughtful answers because they will have had a little bit of time to think about it versus springing it on them. There's also a chance they're already thinking it. They just need the courage to be able to say it. So I think that's definitely a thing that could be helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Merrill. Thank you, Jacqueline. Kelly, I think I cut you off and you were going to say something else. Did I cut you short?
No, I had a different thought. So may I resume with my other thought to my psychology, to my brain? What was I? It was very poignant, but now it's kind of messy. I get these foggy moments. Um, Boy.
Kelly, do you want me to come back to you so you
No,
can
actually,
stop?
it just came to me.
Okay.
Sometimes people are rather surprised that I function so well, which I do, in my opinion, am running the group and meeting hundreds of patients. I think I am doing rather well. Not to say I don't have moments in my life where I become disabled. I have, and I've overcome them. I think for me as a leader and also as a patient, I think my tough love with myself has given me a different perspective of not giving in to babying myself, if that makes sense. Sometimes I'm like a drill sergeant in my head. Come on, get up. Come on, you're having a bad day. We'll put Lanacaine on your knees. I'm already talking to myself of how I'm going to how I'm going to address my challenge for that day. In your opinion, doctor, do you think that that is a good, healthy solution to dealing with chronic illness? That's my question.
Sure. I think that it's just going to depend on the person. I think if you found that that's something that works for you, yeah, keep doing it. You're obviously doing something right. You found something that fits for you. Great. I think, we got to strike a lot of people have to strike a balance of like drill sergeant and nice person, or maybe nice drill sergeant to do the motivating. But yeah, I think there's probably as many answers to that question as there are people in the room of what's going to fit for different folks.
Well said from Kelly and well said from you. And knowing Kelly personally, and I'll never forget when I first started working for the foundation and we had our little luncheon. You were there, Dr. Merrill, doing a talk for the leaders. And I learned how much Kelly had been through. It was an eye opener of how much our families, our warriors push themselves to live with this disease and sometimes silently dealing with some of the issues because, you know, when you look at Kelly, you don't see what she's going through. And I think her loved ones, her support group, myself are so used to seeing her push herself that sometimes it is overlooked. And I think that a lot of our warriors go through that and persevere through. So I just thought I would comment on that and also, you know, commend your comment, Kelly, but like Dr. Merrill says, having that balance. So thank you very much. I got another question in the chat box. Pat, I'll get to you next. Sarah, as a caregiver of my incredible 10-year-old scleral kiddo, how cute, how much emotion of lack thereof is appropriate to display show. Sometimes I find myself having waves of emotions and I don't know how much is useful to let her see and how much I should hide. I want her to feel validated in her experience, but I don't want my own reactions to take away from her.
Awesome question.
Yeah.
Yeah. And something that I'm glad you're being thoughtful about. I keep giving this answer of like, it depends. Depends on the kiddo. Depends on you. I think like a healthy sharing of emotions is good. One thing that kids are learning from us is like, how do I do emotions? Right. And they learn those really by watching us. And it would be impossible not to have waves of different emotions as you are going through this. I think it's okay to share that in a way that feels like kind of commensurate with her age. And that might look like, you know, she's old enough to know like, oh, mom's eyes are tearing up, right? And so we'll say like, oh, I feel really sad about that. And I'm going to be okay. You know, so just like that reminder of like, yeah, I'm going to feel some emotions and then I'm going to be okay. Because that's what we really want to teach our kids. Like, yeah, we're going to have emotions. The tempting thing to do, and sometimes the easier thing would be like to shut off the emotion valve and like, shoop, shut it down, right? But then we're communicating like, nope, don't have emotions. And then she can interpret that as like, oh gosh, this isn't even impacting her, right? So trying to share it in a way of like, yep, I'm gonna have these emotions and I'm going to be okay, I think can be a helpful approach.
Thank you, Dr. Merrill. And thank you, Sarah. You're a rock star parent, that's for sure. Both you and Jacqueline. Pat, you can unmute.
Yes. Yes. Hi, Dr. Merrill. I really found it helpful when you were talking about how relationships between the caregiver and the patient can change. Let's say, and I'm thinking in terms of spouses, okay?
Mhm.
And you said that they can change. Instead of a partnership, it becomes more hierarchical.
Yeah.
And you gave an example of, you know, parent, child, you know, when before you were equal, you know, you both had, you know, input and ideas that you shared. My question is, that affects the relationship profoundly, I would think, because one is ill, maybe weaker in certain respects, but if the relationship changes, one has to take on a parental, let's say a parental role in handling, you know, the situation. Can that partnership somehow be preserved or you know, recaptured Or is that likely to stay in a different, on a different relationship now?
Yeah, great question. And I think there is yet another new normal to adjust to with that. I think it'd be helpful if that's resonating with you to like share that idea and have a conversation about it with your partner of, I'm feeling this, are you feeling this? And thinking about the ways when you are feeling in partnership, like if there are topics or things where like, no, we still have like this thing, because it's not always like dramatically across all domains, it's hierarchical necessarily. So starting to look at things like when are we feeling equal? Are there places where we can be more equal? Where can I also be, depending on where you're at with the illness, are there days or ways that I am more up here? I think it definitely can be recaptured, but I don't think it's like exactly like it was before, because that the caregiving is just going to be in place unless there's like a drastic change in remission or recovery.
Well, thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah. And there are some wonderful couples therapists out there. I'm not one of them. But you can certainly find people who are very skilled in helping facilitate that if it feels like it would be helpful.
Yeah. Thank you both. I have a question in the chat box. Lisa, how much do I participate and be active and involved in meetings and support groups and learning about the disease when my young adult child with the disease has become disengaged at times as she goes through her battles with the disease? Sometimes it feels like she's so distant and I can't break through her barriers, even though I know she's hurting physically and emotionally.
Yeah, not an easy answer. That's a difficult situation for sure. I think I'm seeing two things going on there. And so my first question for you to think about would be like, what's for you, right? Like what in there is for you? Are the support groups are they helpful for you? Is it helpful for you to engage with people in similar situations? And then the piece of then how do I engage with your young adult child and what she's going through. I think all that you can do when it comes to a kiddo who can be shut down is to create the knowledge and awareness that you're there. When they're ready, you're there. Like the end. So that they can come to you, they can share different things, whatever's going on, because it's very rarely going to be on your timetable. Usually it's when we back off a little bit that they're like, what's going on? This is happening. But just knowing that there's nothing that they can tell you that you're not going to love them through, not understand, or be there for them through. And knowing that things are going to be hard. And sometimes people do just kind of want to go into their little isolation. And usually that's temporary. If it's not temporary, starts lasting a long time, then you might want to get in touch maybe with a professional just to make sure that things are going okay. Like sometimes if they won't talk to a parent, they'll talk to a therapist, And none of those are magical solutions either. That's just some thoughts of what we could do.
Thank you, Dr. Maril. And Lisa, I wanted to say, as I was listening to this, it made me think of the two groups we have. We have our parents of kids and teens living with scleroderma, and I know that your daughter's past that. And I know that a lot of our parents in this group are going through that as their children are reaching these teenage years and are having a hard time, or really just don't want to identify with the disease. And it's so nice that these parents have each other to talk to. And then we have our young adult support group where our young adults, from 17 to, their late 30s come and talk with each other. But some of these parents who've been through it and watched their kids grow up into young adults, can be a source for you. And I would love to connect you with some of these parents that can talk with you. And I hope that when you do come to the support group meetings, that when you express your thoughts on some of these things, that some of the families that are there will help you through being there for you, because you're a valued part of our support groups, and we truly appreciate you and how much you care to even ask this question that's not always easy. So I just want you to know we appreciate that, and that if you're interested in that, I'm happy to help facilitate it. I've got another question here from Tamisa. Can imagery help? I tell my husband this is a 3-legged race and I can't run this race successfully without him. Cute, Tamisa.
Yeah, I like that. I think that can definitely be helpful. That paints a really clear picture.
Let's see, I'm trying to see if there's any more hands up. Got another. As newlywed, Rachel, the subject of communication was great to hear. Rachel, I appreciate you saying that. Sorry, I'm cutting you off, Dr. Merrill. She's such a rock star that came to one of my meetings recently, and I just really loved her perspective as a young adult that just got married and her open honesty. I just thought I'd say that because I just really appreciated it. But Dr. Merrill?
Oh, that's great feedback. I'm glad that was helpful.
Thank you. Anybody else have any thoughts, comments, or questions? Gonna go through here and see if I see anything. Somebody wanted to talk?
Yeah, this is Paul and Nora.
Okay, sure. Go right ahead.
This is our first meeting with the group, and it for me it as a doctor, she ran down the list pretty much. A lot of it, for me personally, I had a lot of guilt. I do have a lot of guilt, and then a lot of anger issues and stuff. And it's not towards Nora. It's really towards myself, because it's like my guilt is because when we were together, we was going out, like places and stuff, and she would always have these coughing attacks and breathing issues, and then so I finally went with her to her doctor, and I forced the issue that they find out what's wrong with her, because it's like anything she smells, from the air, environmental, allergies. We find out later that's what she had, and then when we found out as time went along, she found out she had scleroderma. And it's like, for me, it's like, okay, I want to be supportive, and then it's like, it seems like I feel like I fail at times, and like my most thing right now, my struggle right now with is, trying to understand it more and be more supportive. But my because we used to go, like they were saying earlier, we used to go out all over the place. We take long trips and go here and there, and we just have a good time. After the pandemic, we go out still, and she would cough and and stuff, and people, and I get really protective and very defensive, and people would like stare, and they'll start making comments, and I would nearly snap at them and say, it's not COVID. She has she has a rare disease, and she has allergy environments. And it come to where I nearly, would get physical, and I would stop myself, because it was like, and it would just it would make her panic, and it would make her worse for her. And so, we end up ending whatever we're doing, or I would just be frustrated. But now my concern is that after we found out more, because she does a lot of research. I'm telling you, she's constantly trying to educate me on this, and it just goes in one ear and out the other. And I try to, and like I said, try to be more supportive. But my concern right now is just her eating. She's eating like maybe like one of them, like them little, like the size of those jello. I mean, no, those fruit cup sizes for for packing lunches. And that's how much she eats a day. She used to be.
I'm gonna cause ask you to pause because it's a lot of information, and I want Dr. Merrill to be able to comment on the things that are specific to your needs that are a part of the theme of this program. So let her let's pause for a second. Let her think about some of the things that you said, and let her give you some thoughts. And can I just say, I so appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability with saying this to the group, because sometimes you're saying the thing that somebody else wants to, but they can't get the nerve. So I appreciate it. And I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Merrill.
Reading my mind. Yeah, I also appreciate you sharing that, and the risk and the vulnerability. And you know what you're describing, it sounds like a grieving process to me, you know, connecting with anger. And there's a lot really beautiful about what you're sharing that conveys that you love her very much and you want her to be okay. You want people to leave her alone, right? It's difficult to manage really strong feelings like that. Sometimes I'm also hearing you wanting to be like a better partner. And this is a time when I would really encourage self-compassion. Like, yeah, you're not going to get everything perfect. You might feel like you fail sometimes. You aren't able to fix this thing. You can't control what other people are doing in public as much as you want to. And to be able to be there for her in a way where she feels cared for, like that's your job. And you can ask her about that. You can like check in on this. You know, what am I doing that helps you feel cared for? What am I doing that you're feeling less cared for? And that back to that relationship math of like, if it's good, do more. If it's not, do less. And have conversations with each other about it.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Merrill. And can I say to both of you, come to our support group meetings, both virtually and in person. We have a come one, come all once every other month for anybody from anywhere that can come. And this is for both of you. And, you know, Nora, you need the support, but your husband does too. And maybe he'll have somebody in the meeting that can identify as a spouse, as a caregiver, that can relate to what you're going through and help you with the understanding that you need. So I encourage it. And our next virtual come one, come all is next Saturday. And I'll make sure when I do my recap and share the recording of this video that you all have that information. So you're welcome to join. So thank you again for your question and your honest comments. I appreciate both of you. I have a comment from Rose. I find myself isolating from people just because I don't have the energy. I'm not sure if this is a healthy way to deal with my diagnosis, but it's almost like a protection. Will this need to be alone? Will this need to be alone diminish as I become more accepting of my disease?
A good question. And it may. I think it really depends. If you can become more accepting of who you are with this illness, then you might find yourself feeling like reaching back out to folks. I think it's really reasonable, kind of depending where you are in your disease progression. It's very normal to like mega cocoon, especially at the beginning, and just go someplace and hide out. That can be beneficial in lots of ways because it's more controlled. Like if it's just you've got that. You don't have to kind of worry about what other people are doing. You got control of your environment to an extent, control of yourself to an extent. You don't have to worry about the other stuff. Similarly, in my answer to Kelly's question, the thing that I just would pay attention to, this varies person to person, is like how much you're missing folks, or if you start experiencing loneliness, that's going to be something to check in with and maybe do something about.
It would help if I unmuted. Sorry. My dear friend Tracy says, I'm both a scleroderma patient and a caregiver to an older parent in not great health. I've found it's important to be able to set limits on what I need to do. For example, I don't mind picking up your prescriptions, but you can't tell me the day you have to run out.
I love that. Yep. Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. And that's a really nice example of having a conversation beforehand, right? Of identifying something that's come up and being like, happy to do this. Give me 3 days. Give me a couple days of warning, and I will make sure that happens for you.
Thank you, Dr. Merrill. I think it's important that we did recognize that a lot of our families living with scleroderma end up being caregivers for others. And wow, what a task of living with the disease yourself and then also taking care of somebody else. And that's why I thought this was so important that we try to tackle the different variety, shall we say, of caregiving that impacts the scleroderma community. So thank you,
Definitely.
Tracy, for your comment. Anybody else? I'm looking to see if there's any hands up. And if you don't want to put it on your virtual hand, you can raise your hand in your, well, not the ones that are off camera because I can't see you. But I don't see any more. And I think we're done unless anybody has any final thoughts, comments, questions, anything that you want to let everybody know before we end the meeting. Tamisa, can you unmute?
Hi, I just wanted to say that my husband and I will watch this later. So hopefully, because I think we need it, but if we'll watch it together later. So that's progress, and progress is incremental sometimes. So
That it is. I'm really glad to hear that.
That's beautifully said, Tamisa. And I encourage everybody, to do that. And another reason why I wanted to have this recorded, because as I talk to families and I see that this could be a need, I can encourage you to send you the link and sit down with a spouse, a family member, a friend, and let them see this. And maybe it opens the door for comments and questions that maybe wouldn't be said without this video. So I encourage everybody to go back through it, maybe even take some notes, or if your loved ones, a friend, family, a caregiver wasn't here, that you can on your own time watch the video after I send out the final recording and ask them if they would sit down with you. So thank you. We're going to go ahead and end the meeting. I just want to say thank you so much, Dr. Merrill, for your time. We miss you here in California and would love to have you back. Nora's husband says, Nora says, I always tell Paul I have become appreciative everything he does for me. That's sweet, Nora. Thank you.
More. There's more.
Yeah, I said that. Thank you so much. And thanks for saying that because he needs to hear that. And sometimes that validation for both is so lovely. So thank you for saying that, Nora. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of today. Again, Dr. Merrill, for your time, all of our warriors, for the ones that I know and haven't seen for a while, love you, miss you. And for you new ones, so glad you came and we're here for you. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. And thank you so much. Got another comment. Thank you, Dr. Merrill. Thank you, Tina and Andrew, for this fantastic session. And another thank you. Great. Thank you for saying that, guys. It warms my heart. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody. Yeah. Sorry.
This is Nora. I didn't finish typing. What I wanted to say is I've always been independent, strong-minded, self-reliant, and I've never really verbalized my true feelings. Due to scleroderma and my incapacitation, from what I consider incapacitated, I'm becoming more vocal and expressing emotions. Because as we all know, tomorrow or the next hour is not granted to us. So I've become more verbal and saying, I love you, I appreciate you, you don't know how much you are, or a blessing to me. People that I talk to on the phone, when I can talk, I'm telling everyone, I love you. You aren't family by roots, but you're a family that God has set in my path. And everyone is blessed by having a true friend, even if you don't see them every day, every month, every year. But when you get together and you come together as one soul, That's more than blood. Water can always be thicker. And when you reach out and they're there, that makes a big difference. And you appreciate life. And you see that God puts people in our path for maybe not that instant, but further down our lifeline. And our journey of life consists of many volumes and chapters. I'm just going through another volume in a chapter of my life, but I hope to overcome this. And I wanted to share, if there's anyone who cannot verbalize, think about what God has put in your path and how He has taught you to reach this destination and to go further. And I do love everyone that I come in contact. They help me in so many different ways. I think this is the second battle I've gone through without realizing what I had. If it hadn't been for Paul telling the doctor about my coughing, I may have taken longer and gotten to a worse situation. So I appreciate what you did. You don't even have to feel guilty. I love you for that. And if you didn't care, you wouldn't have asked to go and see. He didn't ask. He said he was going to see the doctor. So that made a big difference. I wanted to close with that. This scleroderma has made me more vocal in my emotions verbally, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the time to speak.
Thank you,
Thank
Nora.
you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for your honest comments, Nora. And I see that about you just from our conversations. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. There's so many notes now, Dr. Maril, thanking you, thanking us. And I love it. It warms my heart and helps my day just knowing that we helped all of you. So thank you all. Carry on, warriors. Until next time, thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.